is up, everybody? This is Power to Women, and this is like the 30th episode, maybe 31st, not really sure. I should really look that up. But today is a very exciting episode, I would say. It's a very mysterious episode also. The person I'm talking about is a little unusual, okay? But before we begin with who this episode is about, let's get into the special guest of the show for today. So this is Jerry, and for everybody listening, I have a very tall cactus. Well, it's not really tall, it's just like in a little mug, but these are my Jerrys. I named them like that because they reminded me of the Jerrys off of Soul. Do you remember if you've watched that show? They just kind of reminded me of those guys. So I was like, these are my Jerrys. But she's doing wonderful. It's probably the plant that has been growing the most for me. Go figure, the freaking cactus, do the best job at raising because you don't really have to do anything. But yeah, so that was my special guest of the show today. And I guess let's just jump into who we're talking about today, or who I'm talking about, and you're going to listen to, okay? So I'm talking about Violet Stewart Louisa Piercy. She was born December 24th, 1889, and she died, maybe, April 1972. You're gonna know why I said maybe here in a little bit. I'll get to that, don't you worry. Let's just start where we always start, okay? From the beginning. So, her mom and her dad were married, and they were 30 years apart. So, when they got married, her mom and her dad was 66, I believe, and her mother was 36, even though her mom lied and said that she was 26, which does not make it better. 30 years is a huge age gap. It's kind of gross. That's my opinion though. But sadly, when Violet was 2 weeks old, her father died, and then when she did have a brother, Violet did have a brother, but then at the age of 8, he died. So she's experienced loss from such an early age, you know what I mean? And that made her a very strong woman, a very determined woman, you know? And so after the father died, the mom, obviously inherited everything the father owned and all, the money and all that. And Violet's mother wasn't stable at all. She was kind of cuckoo, you know. For example, a big event that kind of was whoa, you need to calm down there. Was Violet's mother sued the neighbor because she claimed that he was forging coins and he was also selling illegal liquor. Obviously, he wasn't doing that, and the courts seen that. And so they actually, got mad at the mom because she was, making fake accusations and all that. And then after that, she decided to dress up in all black, and there had been sightings of a black ghost, which was actually her, going around her neighbor's house and, terrorizing him. So, she didn't win, then she went back and terrorized the neighbor even more. So I don't know what kind of beef she had with that neighbor, but it definitely was not neighborly. She was just not a very stable person in Violet's life, and I think that's another reason why Violet is so, determined and, ready to go after whatever she wants. Okay, because she wanted a lot, you know, and she achieved a lot, which is freaking amazing. So now let's get into who Violet Piercy is, or what made her so significant that I'm talking about her today. So she is an English long distance runner. Not any regular English long distance runner, but the first to be recognized by the International Association of Athletics Federations as being the first woman to run a marathon, which is freaking awesome. You know what I mean? So I want to kind of like talk about a little bit of a backstory about women and running. So way back in the day, like probably before the 1800s, women could not run. Women did not run. Nobody let women run. Okay? It was just a very uncommon thing to do for women. There actually used to be organizations that were held and where women would get together and they'd walk a certain distance or a certain mileage. And even that was like, especially like long distance walking, was like frowned upon for women because men said that they could not bear the sight of seeing women so exhausted from physical activity. They couldn't bear the sight. That's a whole nother story that I don't even want to get into because that's so freaking ridiculous. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, you don't want to see us exhausted, but you leave left women at home to take care of the whole house, all the children, everything. But you don't want to see women exhausted. No, it's probably because they were afraid that women were gonna beat their times as a runner. But I didn't know that because I just kind of figured like, yeah, women weren't allowed to join organizations or like big races because they were women, you know. I didn't know that it was actually frowned upon in the society to not even run as a woman, you know. I thought that was ridiculous because it's like, it's running. You know what I mean? Everybody runs. Everybody does. Especially like when you're a kid, you run, you know? I didn't understand that, but yeah, so that's a little backstory for everybody that women weren't allowed to run way back in the day, which is freaking insane. So it was a big freaking accomplishment when Violet did get recognized by that association, because then she was actually recognized through the whole world. You know, she was very publicly famous, I would say. She would call newspapers and she would call like just the news in general, you know, and be like, oh hey, I'm running this long of a distance to this, and I'm gonna break my record. You know, she would call these newspapers so that way she would get people there to watch her, so that way she would be able to get the recognition so she could be seen, you know what I mean? And if it wasn't for that recognition, she actually would have never been recognized as for running a marathon, because the race that she ran the marathon on was a man's race, and so the organization was not going to allow her to be like to even qualify for it because she was a woman. But because of there was so much like publicity and like news articles and all this stuff on her, that they were like, oh, she's kind of famous, you know, she's gonna get our race more attention, so yeah, we're gonna let her run. Which, it's sad that something like that had to happen for her to even be able to have a chance at running. But I also, that's kind of cool that happened, that she got noticed, because that's freaking amazing, you know what I mean? And especially because she was road running. So at that time, it was kind of acceptable for a woman to run, but only at cross country. So they couldn't run on the roads. And Violet was running on the roads, which was freaking amazing, you know? She was showing everybody, hey, this is what I'm doing, and anybody else can do it too. Like, that was a big thing for her. She wanted to prove to other women that they can run too, and they can, like, really, like, make a difference and beat that time of men's, you know? Which I thought was really cool. But she ran her first marathon on October 3rd, 1926, with a time of 3 hours, 40 minutes, and 22 seconds, which is freaking fast. That's hella fast. And her record stood for 37 years until Mary Lepper's 3 hours and 37 minutes and 7 seconds. Mary Lepper was an American long distance runner, but it took 37 years for a woman to stand up to Violet's freaking personal record, which is freaking amazing. Like, holy crap. That's a long time to hold a record. But yeah, so I want to share like a little article that I found. So the Auckland Star on October 5th, 1926 printed this Press Association item. In the Windsor to London Ladies Marathon race, Miss Violet Piercy, a member of the British Women's Olympic team, covered the distance of 3 hours and 40 minutes, which is better than the record for the distance by man. She ran the 20 or more miles in everyday walking shoes with crossover strap and heel, and her only sustenance was a glass of water and some lumps of sugar. Okay, and I seen a picture of her running in those shoes, and when I tell you they look like freaking tap dance shoes, they did. I don't know how she ran in that, and her feet were okay. Especially like on the road, because the cement is a lot harder to run on than just like gravel or dirt or anything like that. And she was running, she was running in shoes that looked so freaking uncomfortable. I don't know how she would have done it. And that's freaking amazing. And for her to be able to like produce a time like that is freaking amazing. Like, holy crap. But I thought that was really interesting that a news article covered that and said that. But the part where it said 20 or more miles, it's really undetermined how far she actually went at that time. A standard marathon race right now is 26.2 miles, but back then it ranged from anywhere from 20 miles and up. So you could have ran 20 miles and called it a marathon, and people would have like been okay with it, you know. So it's really unclear of how far she ran, but it was definitely in the 20s, which is why they clarified at her as the first marathon runner, which is freaking amazing. You know what I mean? Like I said, like she did this running and she did and she got so much publicity and she got so much attention from the media because she wanted to show and tell other women that it's possible for them to run too. So in 1934, she organized the first ever road race for women, and it was just over 3 miles. In the South London press, she claimed that on every side women are clamoring for longer and more exacting stamina tests. And 13 runners showed up, which is freaking amazing because considering at that time, road running for women was not allowed and it was discouraged, you know, so that's an amazing turnout. And she's doing this for other women, which is freaking amazing. She was an amazing woman that wanted to help push other women up and to show them that it's possible, you know, which is freaking amazing. In 1935, she announced a new personal challenge. Starting from the Dick Willington statue at the High Gate, she would run 5.25 miles to the monument in central London and then without pause run up its 311 steps. And this was probably her biggest turnout that she got while she was doing any running event. And she crushed it, you know what I mean? Which is freaking amazing because, like, she knew how to use the media in her favor. She knew how to get good, well, I wouldn't say that it was all good, but to get attention, to show other women that it's possible to run. She kind of drove that, you know what I mean? And I thought that was amazing because, like, it's one thing to just run by yourself and not tell anybody, but she was running and telling everybody so that way people could see, that she was doing amazing things, and she was. She was running a distance that not a lot of women did. And it was very uncommon at that time, which is freaking awesome. And she was wearing freaking tap dance shoes to run a marathon in. What the hell? Like, how did she even do that? I would like to know. Because that must have killed her feet. And if it didn't, she's got freaking strong feet, man. But there was actually extensive searches that have failed to trace any record of her after 1958. So that's why I said she's a little mysterious, because after 1958, nobody knows if she went abroad, if she married, if she died. Nobody really knows. She just kind of disappeared, which is weird. What is even weirder was because in 1948, the Olympic Games were held in London, and then in 1964, there was another British woman, Dale Greig, who completed a marathon and set a new time for 3 hours and 27 minutes. So, there was, all these big running events that, you would think that she'd be interested in, and if she was so big publicly, you would think she would want to join into those, the Olympics, or she would go and try to race that other female runner. But nobody ever heard from her. Nobody ever even, nobody knows, which is so weird. Let me go back a little bit before I get into how she died and all that came after her. So she kind of followed in her mother's footsteps and sued a lot of people. I want to say a lot of people, actually. She just had a few court dates that she had to go to. So during the late 1920s, she was involved with a Dr. Copeland, and Dr. Copeland had asked but Dr. Copeland promised to invest 100 pounds of Violet's money. And it turns out he did not do that. He took the money for himself. And then a few months later, he offered Violet a job as a secretary, paying her £2 a day. Which is freaking ridiculous, considering that she freaking gave him money and then he was like, oh, come be my secretary, which is freaking ridiculous. But she took him to court because he was obviously stole her money and then didn't do anything about it. Never paid her back, even though he should have, because he should have never took the money in the first place. He should have invested it, but he didn't. But then he would talk to other people and he would claim that she was blackmailing him and saying that she was trying to get money out of him, which was not true at all, obviously, So she took him to court, and the court actually ruled in her favor, which is freaking amazing, and she actually got awarded £200 and costs. So she got interest on top of that freaking money. He had to pay back double, which is freaking amazing, because he should have never took that freaking money in the first place. Freaking douche, you know what I mean? But yeah, so she kind of had a little bit of court problems like her mom did. Not as unstable as her mom, but definitely still willing to get what's hers, which is cool, because that's what she should be doing. But let's go back to when she died. So there was a homeless lady who came into the ER, and they thought it was Violet Piercy, because she couldn't talk. She could barely get her name out, and they just got a Violet Piercy. So if it was Violet, who that homeless lady was, her birth certificate doesn't even have the correct last name, which is super sad. But this homeless lady died of a brain hemorrhage, of hypertension, and chronic kidney-related infection. So she died, and it's really sad. But who knows if that was actually Violet Piercy? You know, it could have actually been a Violet Pearson, but nobody knows. You know, that's why it's so weird, because she was so big publicly, and she was so like determined to get her name out there and to like show the world who she was. But then all of a sudden she just like dropped out of nowhere, and she just completely stopped, which is so freaking weird. And I'm not sure if she ever actually got married, if she ever had kids. There's like no record of her, which is so wild, because she was like, she reached out to the media to get attention, but then she just stopped. I thought that was so crazy, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to talk about her, was because there was a little mystery involved. You know, she wasn't the first woman runner. She wasn't the first long distance runner. In fact, and there was a record from France in 1892 that she ran 91 miles in 27 hours and 32 minutes. She ran for over a day. That's insane. Okay, if you want me to talk about who that person was, I totally will do an episode, because when I read that, I was so fascinated. I was like, could you imagine running for a day? A whole day. Like, obviously, she probably stopped to go to the bathroom, to drink, to eat, but like to just run, that's all you're doing. I was shocked. I was like, 91 miles. Wow, that's crazy. But if you want me to do an episode on her, like I said, I totally will. So Violet Piercy now has her entry in the Oxford Dictionary of National Biography, which is freaking awesome, because she's getting the recognition she deserves, because she was one of the first women to run a marathon in London. On that race, on that course that she ran on, she was the first. And I'm glad that she was being recognized, because a lot of women back then who did run weren't recognized because they were running in men's races, or they were running on their own, or they just weren't recognized because they were a woman, which was really sad, because women do amazing things, you know what I mean? And speaking of equality, because men and women should be equal, even in being recognized, they should be equal. Today, August 26th, is National Women's Equality Day. Woohoo! Hell yeah. Fun fact, August 26th was actually the day that women were granted the right to vote in 1971, which is freaking amazing. That law came about in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. So it's written in the freaking Constitution now, which it should have been in the first place, but I did not write it. Obviously. But yeah, so that was Violet. I hope everybody learned a lot about her and learned a lot about women running in general, because I was very shocked. I did not know that women didn't run way back in the day. Like, I guess I never really thought about it, but I didn't know they did like walk races, or they just didn't run on the road. They ran in the cross country. Like, I didn't know that, and I was very fascinated to learn about that, because last weekend I ran a marathon. I'm officially a marathon runner. Woo! I've been talking about running a marathon since I started this podcast, and I'm so happy that I'm still doing this podcast, and now I'm able to talk about running a marathon. It took me 5 hours and 40 minutes, I believe. It was a tough run, a very, very tough run. I know that I needed to change some things. I needed to do some things differently for next time. And it just was not my best performance. I ran on a trail I never ran on before, and I got eaten alive by mosquitoes. I don't know if you can see this, but I got like eaten alive. I swear I spent more time like wiping down my shoulders and my legs from like mosquitoes on me than I did actually running. Like every time I looked down on my arms, I would have like 2 or 3 mosquitoes on each arm, and I was just so exhausted wiping them off. I'm like, oh my god. And it was hard, it was mentally hard from like the mosquitoes and all that, but overall, it was a great experience, and I'm glad I did it. I'm really proud of myself, honestly, because that was a big accomplishment for me. That's like the first thing I'm ever going to be able to cross off of my bucket list. That's the first time, which is freaking amazing. And that's why I want to talk about Violet, because she was trying to inspire other women to run long distances. And she wanted to show other women that because she can do it, other people, like other women can too. It's not impossible for a woman to run a long distance, even though men used to claim that it would hurt them physically, or it would hurt them like while they were trying to, like if they ever wanted to have children, they couldn't run, because if they ran, then they wouldn't be able to have children, which is an insane lie that men came up with for, I have no idea why. I don't know why that's such a big thing, but I thought that was really cool that she was trying to show other women that it was possible. And I'm trying to show other women that it's possible to go after your dreams, Maybe it's not running. Go after what you want. Create your freaking own bucket list and go after it, It can be anything. And so, yeah, that was Violet. I hope everybody enjoyed and learned a lot. So let's get into the positive segment time. Woohoo! So today I have a pre-read one. So scientists developed an Ebola vaccine with a 100% success rate. The Ebola outbreak was one of the worst epidemics in recent history, and trials in Guinea have confirmed that a new vaccine boasts a 100% protection rate. This will put an end to the 11,000 deaths in Guinea and the surrounding area, curbing the number of affected at 28,000. The trials were funded and supported by Merck and the WHO, plus the governments of Canada, Norway, and Guinea, which is freaking amazing. You know what I mean? I know a big epidemic or pandemic right now is the COVID-19, and there is a vaccine out there. There's multiple vaccinations out there that you can get, and people aren't getting vaccinated, which is making the cases skyrocket again, and everybody's like, oh, what's happening? Why is this happening again? It's because we're not getting vaccinated, But then when I read about Ebola, it's common sense for people to be like, oh yeah, let's go get vaccinated. Or like smallpox when you're a kid. Of course you're probably going to get vaccinated, you know what I mean? There's no reason for us to keep getting sick with diseases that are curable or diseases that you can be protected from. There's just no point to it. Don't get sick because you can get a vaccine. Just like Ebola. If people were like, oh no, we're not going to take the Ebola vaccine, you could be killing thousands of people, And with COVID-19, you could be killing millions of people for not getting a vaccine. One little shot, I am vaccinated. I have been vaccinated since last February. I'm very proud of it because I'm doing my part. I'm trying to help the earth get back to where it was, or to get healthier, Screw going back. Let's get healthier. Let's keep going forward, because I know our future is going to be great and our future is going to be healthy, hopefully. But yeah, so that's freaking amazing that Ebola is 100% cured now, which is amazing, And thank you for all the countries and all the governments who put money into that vaccine and who helped countries get rid of that disease in their borders, which is freaking amazing. But yeah, so that was a positive segment time. I hope you enjoyed. And that was the episode. I also hope you enjoyed the episode. I learned a lot. I hope you did too. I know that I am inspired to keep running because I love running. And if you want to be inspired by something, Google that thing, and you're going to find somebody who's done it, and you can look for them for inspiration and use them for that, which is freaking amazing that there's other people out there like that who you can get inspiration from. And so yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed. So if you want to, you can go follow this podcast on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube at Power to Women, and you can also find this podcast on all podcasting mediums. Also, if you would like to go check out my personal Instagram page at EmilyNichol00, that'd be awesome, and my personal Twitter page at YoungEmily1864, that'd also be awesome. So, as always, everybody, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Stay healthy out there. Try to get vaccinated. Keep wearing your masks if you're not vaccinated, and stay healthy. We will get healthier. Go for a run, okay? Be inspired by somebody, and have an amazing rest of your week. I'll talk to you next Tuesday. Peace and aliens be with you.